Today's just modern alternative rock. It's a different sound. This is a very vintage tone. 1986, the Princeton amp. One of the models that Fender released. I had a Princeton. It's pretty cool. The Princeton featured a really nice vibrato effect that was built in, chorus as well, and just sort of a clean and a dirty. It's a very simple amp, but with that extra vibe, you got that nice shaky sound. It's a great sound. Now we also have the Princeton 67 model. Same amp from 2 decades before. You can hear a distinct difference between that and the model that came out nearly 20 years later. In 1994, Fender released the ProSonic amp series. I had a Fender ProSonic as well. This was a tube amp that just kicked. Most of Fender's sounds have very good clean sounds, but very light, dirty channels. They do work for rock, but they're known really more in the blues sort of section of, but they're known really well. In 1994, Fender released the ProSonic series. In 94, Fender released the ProSonic series. ProSonics were awesome amps. I had one. They re-released them some years later as well. The ProSonics were tube amps, and they came in a variety of really cool vintage colors. The traditional black that most amps these days come in, as well as a big fire engine red and a traditional vintage, we'll call it 57 Chevy blue. It was really cool. So I owned the red one, but the ProSonics were basically tube amps that Fender made, but they really fit rock sounds. And Fender, as we know, they're great amps. They have great clean channels, and their overdrives are great too, but their sound, even with the drive, although you can rock out on it, and some of even their smaller amps still have amazing drives, like the small practice amps, the Frontman series, great overdrives, and you can totally rock out. But they've always traditionally had a different overdrive than, say, the PV series or Marshalls, which have always sort of leaned towards the rock genre. And so with the ProSonic series, you had a nice rock overdrive. And that helped a lot because Fender brought themselves back to a heavier sound that they didn't quite have before. As we know, in the 90s, grunge took over, and Fender was there. They took over that sound, and they were able to get up there and compete with all the other amps, thanks to the ProSonic. So, very cool amp. Now, getting into some of the presets, that's where I like this amp, because it doesn't just model these amps, it also has these presets for sounds from songs and artists that we're familiar with, and that's what I always like. I like to have a sound that's similar to somebody I just admire their tone. Like Carlos Santana always has a great warm sound. Eddie Van Halen has one of the most unique and identifiable sounds. If you're a Van Halen fan, you hear that, you know it's Eddie playing. And it's not just the way he plays, but there's something about his tone. So whoever your favorite guitar players are, there's just a certain sound that they each have, and it's a signature for them. You hear a lot of those cool echoes. Moving on, we have something called high voltage. Let's see how high voltage it is. Heavy overdrive, great for rock, very powerful sound. some effects, like the trem effect, very, very unique, and you can only use them in certain contexts, but they have a great, great sound. That shaky sound is a signature of a trem effect, and it can be faster or slower. If I do it slow with the tap button, so when you slow it down, you get a nice effect like but you could also speed it up. The best thing about that sound is it reminds me a lot of Satriani, Eric Johnson, and even a little bit of Mark Knopfler. The gain isn't very high, but there's just something very warm and inviting. Now, another application of the trem effect is displayed on this channel, Heavy Soul. And the reason it's titled that is real simple. The band Collective Soul has a song called Heavy, and they just personify that sound in that song. It's a heavy drive behind the trem effect, so when you hit it, you can only hit it once, and you still get a whole rhythm section. The rhythm, again, is tapped out to the beat of the song, which can be changed a little bit with the tap button. But if you imagine playing very cool sound. Now, it's a very interesting effect, the trem, because you can't really play leads with that on, because it's overwhelming. So, very good for rhythm. Great effect for rhythm. This particular setting right now has a standard delay with a phaser on. So it's a clean channel, but it's got such a great distant sort of sound that you can really take advantage of for another sort of mood. Now, the Edge from U2 likes to take advantage of that sound, and on here there's another preset called No Name Streets. Interesting title. Very much simulating the echo effects that the Edge likes to use. Again, you hear a dominant delay. The echo is echoing a lot, and it's loud on the initial echo. Some of the presets are not as extravagant with special effects as much as just, like I said, having a certain tone that you want. This channel is the Reverb Bassman, and it just sounds like the old Bassman amps with the nice Fender reverb, great for blues. Now, if you do like the funkier effects, this has a nice built-in